for the hastening of the reappearance of the Master, the Savior, the Avenger, the holder of these majalis, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari. Recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraj. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What an incredible, priceless honor it is to once again be invited to the gatherings that mourn Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. What a privilege we've been granted by the Imam of the time to share in his grief and his lamentation over the martyrdom of his grandfather, Aba Abdullah. It's an honor that cannot be equated with any other. It cannot be sold, it cannot be purchased. It is something that is given as a blessing from the Imam of the time to be allowed once again to commemorate the greatest tragedy of all. You must have heard that the companions of Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, as well as the eve of the day of Ashura, they spoke to their master and they reaffirmed their pledge of allegiance to him. One of those companions was Burayr ibn Khudayr. The statement that he makes is appropriate for a night like this. And it sets the mindset that we are required to possess as we begin our journey towards boarding the ark of salvation that is Hussein. When the Imam told his companions, إِنَّ هَذَا الْيَوْمِ قَدْ غَشِيَكُمْ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ جَمَلًا. This night has cast its darkness upon you. It's provided you with the perfect cover. So use it as a means of escape. Leave me. This army has come with one objective, one goal in mind, and that is to either capture or kill me. Once they do that, they won't mind if you have escaped, if you've left. They won't come and track you down. They won't chase you. They won't capture you. They want nothing to do with you. I'm their primary objective. So the companions each rise up, and perhaps their intention was to provide comfort to the trembling hearts of the women and the children. Maybe it was to reaffirm their pledge of allegiance to Aba Abdullah, but they spoke with impeccable clarity and lucidity. Burayr ibn Khudayr said the following. He said, Wallah ya Aba Abdullah, I swear in the name of Allah, لقد من الله علينا أن نقاتل بين يديك تقطع أعضاؤنا فيك. Ya Aba Abdullah, it is the greatest honor that Allah has bestowed upon us. This isn't a duty. This isn't an obligation. This isn't a burden. It's the greatest privilege that Allah has blessed us with. To do what? أن نقاتل بين يديك. That we get to fight in front of you and in defense of you. Then he adds this, he says, تُقَطَّعَ أَعْضَاؤُنَا دُونَكَ. That our limbs would be torn, that our bodies would be cut into pieces for your sake. You're telling us to leave you so that we could save our own lives? How could we abandon you? How could we relinquish this great privilege of fighting for you and having our bodies torn into pieces for your sake. And the reason we do that, Ya Aba Abdullah, is so that لِيَشْفَعَ لَنَا جَدُّكَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. The only thing we seek is that your grandfather Rasulullah would offer us his intercession on the day of judgment. Then he spoke about the enemy. He said, woe unto those who abandoned you. In other words, this isn't just us cursing them. He's saying, imagine the loss. Imagine what they're abandoning when they abandon you. The chance to be among those that Rasulullah embraces on the day of judgment. Brothers and sisters, this is how we should feel. لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. When you're about to step into the courtyard of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, there's a short prayer that you're supposed to recite. It's called إِذْنُ الدُّخُولِ, permission to enter. Not everybody gets to walk into the most sacred land on earth and in the entire universe. You have to ask for permission. You have to be granted this privilege. And so you say, Allahumma inni waqaftu ala babin min abwabi buyuti nabiyyik. Salawatuka alayhi wa ala alih. Oh Allah, I am standing at the gates of one of the houses of your messenger Rasulullah. May your blessings be bestowed upon him and his family. Then you say, you have commanded us not to enter without the permission of Rasulullah. وَقَدْ مَنَعْتَ النَّاسَ أَن يَدْخُلُوا إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ فَقُلْتَ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَدْخُلُوا بُيُوتَ النَّبِيِّ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْذَنَ لَكُمْ. It's an injunction right there in the Holy Quran. O you who believe, do not enter the houses of the messenger except when you are granted permission. Then you say, Allahumma wa inni a'lamu hurmata sahibi hadha al-mashhad al-sharif في غيبته كما أعتقدها في حضرته وأعلم أن رسولك صلى الله عليه وآله. I know, O Allah, the sanctity of the one who dwells in this house of the messenger in his absence, meaning after his martyrdom, as much as I believe in his sanctity during his life. In other words, it makes no difference whether he's been killed or he's right there in front of me. This is a sanctuary. This is a place that is elevated and exalted by God as a house of the messenger. Then you say, وَأَعْلَمُ أَنَّ رَسُولَكَ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ. And the person who lives or dwells in the sanctuary, يَسْمَعُ كَلَامِي وَيَرَى مَقَامِي وَيَرُدُّ سَلَامِي. He hears what I tell him. He responds when I say salam. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And he sees where I stand. He knows that I'm about to enter. And then you say, even though I cannot hear his voice, I know that he responds when I speak to him, when I address him. This is a privilege, brothers and sisters. And it's a privilege that we need to appreciate, because there is no conceivable way I or anybody else can overemphasize or overestimate the value of these gatherings. No way for us to exaggerate the importance of the gatherings that are held in commemoration of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. These majalis, brothers and sisters, are so critical. So critical. And I want you to think about the fact that we are living in the golden age of majalis. If you consider our past, when you learn about the challenges faced by believers throughout the centuries, that they had to grapple with in order to uphold the name of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, in order to cry for him, in order to visit him. When you learn about those challenges, you realize just how privileged we really are. Tyrants have tried to prevent these gatherings from being held under different pretexts and justifications. Oftentimes it was under security pretexts. You're causing a rift in the community. You're creating disunity. You're challenging the government and the authority. Sometimes it was under different pretexts, more blatant, more obvious, more flagrant, enmity towards the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, enmity towards Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Sometimes it was under the pretext of health measures. I mean, we're only a few years past the global pandemic where the gatherings for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein were prevented under those pretexts. And then the same officials that insisted on social distancing, on the closure of the Husayniyat and mosques and even the shrines of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, these officials are now being questioned at the US House of Representatives, where they openly admit that those measures were not based on scientific evidence. How dare those who prevented us from visiting the shrines of the Ahlul Bayt, in particular the shrine of Imam al-Hussein and others, under those pretexts, and now we learn that they were unscientific. I'm not saying that there were absolutely no reasons why certain measures had to be taken and whatnot, but I'm just saying that under different pretexts, these gatherings were limited, they were constrained, and even many, many times prevented. But the Shia persisted. The lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, their love for Imam al-Hussein is a blessing granted to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oftentimes, when you try to trace back why you have such a connection to the Imam, you can't quite put your finger on it. You don't know. Was it my mother? May Allah bless her. Was it my father? May God bless him. Was it my environment? Was it the local Maulana, the speakers, this, that? You don't know. And ultimately, you have to concede that it was God Himself who led your path towards the ark of salvation. Inna للحسين في قلوب المؤمنين حرارة لن تبرد أبدا. There is a flame in the heart of every believer that represents, that embodies, that epitomizes the tragedy of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, this heat that will never dissipate. It will never be extinguished. In other words, God gave this to you. إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدٍ الْخَيْرِ قَذَفَ فِي قَلْبِهِ حُبَّ الحسين وحب زيارته. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Allah put that flame in our hearts. Why did I even deserve it? All these questions are irrelevant. Right now, it's about thanking Allah and showing gratitude and appreciation for this infinitely precious gift that He has given us. لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Once again, this is the golden age of majalis. It's the golden age of ziyarah. It's the golden age of commemoration. Look at the past. Take lessons from our history. When the gatherings for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein were banned, Grand Ayatollah al-Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Ha'iri, the founder of the Islamic seminary in the holy city of Qom, died, some have said, because of the grief that he experienced at the fact that the oppressive tyrant of his day, Reza Khan Pahlavi, prevented these gatherings from being held. He did two things, committed two egregious acts where he challenged God. Number one, preventing women from wearing hijab. The hijab was banned. So many women had to spend years in their homes because they weren't allowed to wear the hijab outside. Number one. Number two, he prevented these majalis. He banned them. Outright prohibition. Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Ha'iri was in deep sorrow over this, to the point where he got sick. Some of his students and people within his circle, they realized the impact this was having on the health of the Sheikh. So somebody went up to him and he said to him, Sheikhna, you're taking this way too seriously. At the end of the day, gathering around each other for the commemoration of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is a recommended act. It's not even wajib. And so this king, he's tyrannical, he's oppressive, he's despotic, but it's not like he's committed a grievous act. He's prevented a recommended and mustahab act from being practiced. They say Sheikh Abdul Karim shook his head. He said, yes, it's a recommended act, but from this one recommended act, 1,000 obligatory acts are born. How many of you have studied in the Islamic seminary to get to where you are now in terms of your gnosis, in terms of your knowledge of your faith and the fundamentals of your religion? How many? How many of you have attended classes? How many of you have taken lessons from your local scholar? Most people don't get to do that. So how did you achieve what you've done? How do you have the knowledge that you have about your faith? It is thanks to these majalis. Thanks to the sacred institution called the Mimbar of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Isn't that the case? We can't overestimate the significance of these gatherings. إن الحسين مصباح هدى وسفينة نجاة. Hussein is a lantern of guidance. He's an ark of salvation. How many people have found the path toward Allah thanks to these gatherings? How many people have converted to the religion of Islam thanks to these gatherings? How many people have embraced the faith of Ahlul Bayt thanks to these gatherings? How many sinners abandoned their immoral ways thanks to these gatherings? Forget about the fact that it was the gatherings of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein that preserved their identity. Forget about the fact that it was the gatherings of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein that allowed us to survive as an entity. Forget all those bigger existential questions on a personal, individual, and visceral level. You all feel it because you've all experienced it. Or you know someone who's experienced it. Once again, this is the golden age. And a smart person is one who seizes the moment, who not only attends these gatherings, but does so with the purest of intentions. Does so by following all the etiquettes of attending the gatherings of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. That they would only attend these majalis with wudu and purity. That when they come here, they purify their intentions. They recite the ziyarah of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. They come here with respect and honor. That they try not to laugh during the 10 nights of Muharram. The hadith says that any given day, when the mere name of Imam al-Hussein was mentioned in the presence of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, the Imam would not be seen smiling for the rest of the day. Just the name, not the tragedy, not the musibah. The mere name of Imam al-Hussein would cause Imam al-Sadiq to be reminded of just what happened to his grandfather Abu Abdullah. And I'll allude to that towards the end. Look at our history. Ayatollah Al-Sayyid Al-Mar'ash Al-Najafi. He was a scholar whose father was in the holy city of Najaf. He studied there. Then they moved to Qom and he passed away in the holy city of Qom. He tells this story. He says that under Reza Khan Pahlavi, when the majalis were banned, one night, I received some guests, perhaps from another city. They all came to Qom looking for a majlis to attend. Imagine, he says, it was the eve of Ashura. Majalis were prohibited. People couldn't go anywhere. And so he says, my guests told me, is there a majlis? Maybe there's like a secret gathering somewhere we could go. And so he said, I told them, they're all banned. And I don't know of any place where people could gather and commemorate Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But let's go out. Let's go and see if we can find some place. He says, so we went out. And there was a Musafir Khana where there was the sound of eulogies coming from the first floor. He says, so I realized that there were a few people who had gathered around to commemorate Abu Abdullah and recite his eulogies. So he says, we looked around, there was no police officers, no one present in that alleyway. So we went in to the first floor and we noticed there was a group of people sitting around. Again, this is about 70 years ago. We're not talking, 3rd, 4th century after Hijrah. He says these people were sitting around and there was a casket in the middle, a coffin, and it was sealed and closed. They were sitting around the casket reciting Masa'ib. He says, I quickly realized that this was just something they had set up in case the security apparatus stormed the gathering. If they came to arrest them, they would say that we have somebody who's died and we're commemorating him. So he says, we sat there, me and my guest, and we started crying and crying and crying. He said about half an hour later, someone perhaps had informed the security forces about this gathering, and so somebody came. He said, that person, I knew him. He was an agent of the government, and his job was to ensure that everybody towed the line and did not gather for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He said, he came in and he became angry and he said, what's happening? What are you doing? He said, so I went up to him. I said to him, listen, this is a group, a caravan that have come from Isfahan. And they have someone with them who's just died. As you can see, this is the coffin right there. And his name is Sayyid Hussein Karbala'i. He mentioned Imam Hussein's name, but in a way, so as not to alert him, and he wasn't lying. He said his name is Sayyid Hussein and he's from Karbala. They're crying for him. Let them mourn. He's their friend. He was someone they loved and respected. He said, so he left us and we stayed back and commemorated. This is what people had to go through. There's someone I know in the holy city of Najaf, a woman. She's originally from a place called Chibayish. It's right at the southern tip of Iraq, near the marshes. It's part of the marshes, in fact. She tells this story. She says that when Saddam, may Allah raise him with his master Yazid ibn Muawiyah, when he prevented the Arba'een walk to the holy city of Karbala, and he began arresting people, he sentenced people to 5-10 years of imprisonment simply for walking, just trying to reach Karbala and visiting Imam al-Hussein. He said when Saddam did that and there was a big crackdown, no one was allowed to go, people began to use different tricks, right? One of them, she explains how they did it. She says that the men in our family, especially her father, and remember these are tribal people, and so to them, a woman is not to go outside and engage with men or get into altercations, God forbid. If there is any possibility that their women would be subjected to any kind of danger or exposed in any way, it's over their dead bodies. And yet she would say that my father told us, look, eyes are on us and we're not allowed to go, but the women, they'll probably give them a pass. So if we're not able to go to Karbala, we want you to go to Karbala. We want you to go so that the road to Karbala does not get empty. That Imam al-Hussein has visitors. That there are women who mourn for the sake of consoling Fatimatu Zahra. And so I want you to go. And so they would sit in these carriages. She said they would put us in the back of a carriage and they would say, off you go. It's a long journey. It takes a few days. And they would tell us that if you ever came across any security personnel, that you should come up with some excuse, or if worse comes to worse, come off of the carriage and push it and say that this carriage is broken so that you could keep walking towards Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. This is what people had to go through in order to uphold the memory of Imam al-Hussein, to keep this flame alive in their hearts. The flame is forever alive. Flame is being kept alive by the tears of angels. But in our hearts, in our collective minds, in our souls, for this name to be seared right into them, people had to struggle. This is our past. As for the future, think about this, brothers and sisters. I hope we don't get to see a day when you remember what I'm about to tell you, but the sad reality is that it's very likely to happen. As for the future, it is dystopian. If you read any of those dystopian novels, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, 1984, Fahrenheit 451, all of these novels that talk about a scary, horrific, dystopian future, you'll see that much of what they talked about in the 20th century has actually materialized. Many of the things that they talk about, addiction on a global scale, drugs being proliferated everywhere, the existence of weapons of mass destruction, who are at the whims of clowns and charlatans, just a few codes away from complete global annihilation. And now with the rise of the far right across the globe, total lunatics being in charge of the law and of security and of governments. You think this is unlikely? Not anymore. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, people would think this is fiction. It's not fiction anymore. This is narrative nonfiction. And so in the words of one of my friends, he's like, I don't want to take my chances living in the future. If they asked me when and at what phase and at what stage in history I would like to be alive, it's right now. This is the golden age. So-called Muslim countries that are friendly to the Shia, historically speaking. Just yesterday and the day before, they took down all the banners, all the flags, all the black cloths. They took them all down. They said it's illegal. The only flag you're allowed to carry is the national flag of the country you're in. You can hold a wedding if you want. You can have a marquee outside if you want. You can do whatever you like. But when it comes to Imam al-Hussein, suddenly we have to implement the law. Look at what's happening in European countries, so-called bastions of democracy and freedom and liberty, where a law is passed. Imagine this. In these countries, you're allowed to give your inheritance to your pet snake if you want. But if you're a Muslim, suddenly you're not allowed to distribute your estate as per the instructions of the Quran. لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ is illegal. If you want to give your male children twice the share of your female children, suddenly the law says that's not allowed. But I can dispose of my wealth whichever way I want according to the law. Not if you're Muslim. Suddenly, there has to be gender equality. I want to homeschool my kids. No, you're not allowed to. The government has to approve any homeschooling program. Why? And that's in these so-called democracies. Suddenly have these far-right fascist groups coming to power. You think it's going to get better? This is our golden age. Let's seize the moment. Let's take every advantage we can possibly take. If we wish to affect meaningful change in our lives by anchoring our boat to the ark of salvation, this is the time to do it. Do not procrastinate. Don't put it off. Don't say that I'll do it in 2 years or 5 years when I go to Hajj, when I go to Ziyarah. You'll never know how long this window will stay open. We don't know. We saw the pandemic. There could be a war. God knows. God knows. And if history is a lesson for us to learn from, the window will not remain open for too long. I talked about this 2 years ago when I was here. And I will keep saying it because you never know. So, these majalis are incredibly important. However, you also have people who try to undermine these gatherings by casting little seeds of doubt. I'm not even talking about our enemies who constantly try to downplay the significance of Ashura. Why is Ashura so important? We had khulafa get killed while in the state of reciting the Quran, mashallah. We've had other people deprived of water. Constant nagging doubts. Trying to downplay, trying to water down, and trying to undermine the gatherings of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But those are enemies. Those are not people that you could really reason with. They'll have somebody else to deal with them. Imam al-Hussein himself will deal with them. The issue is when it comes from within the community. And even those, I think, fall into two categories. You have people who have nefarious objectives. People who use the facade of allegiance to the Ahlul Bayt and of being a Shia. They don the garb of being one of the followers of Imam al-Hussein, and they have nefarious objectives. They're trying to cast these doubts so as to, once again, water down the commemoration. Somehow make it less significance in our lives. Once again, with these kinds of people, I will not engage in any dialogue because it's a waste of my breath. These are people who have a disease in their hearts. في قلوبهم مرض. Allah says, فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. They have a disease in their hearts, so Allah intensifies their disease. Allah makes them sicker. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says that disease is the disease of doubt. Which is why the Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, لا ترتابوا فتشكوا ولا تشكوا فتكفروا. He says, الشك يطفئ نور القلب. Doubt is something that extinguishes the light of the heart. If you have any doubts, dismiss them or seek answers to alleviate them. Go to qualified scholars. Do proper supervised research if you have any doubts. Don't let those doubts linger. Don't allow them to fester. Don't give them the chance to spread like a viral infection. Seek help as you would with any sickness. It's a sickness, it's a disease, as the Quran says. And so it's used by shaitan specifically for this purpose. And specifically when it comes to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. I'll share one incredible piece of evidence. Exhibit A. Imam Zainul Abidin mentions a hadith in which he quotes Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The Imam says that the Holy Messenger of God told us about the events that will unfold on the day of Ashura. You all know that the events of Ashura, for the most part, were foretold not just by Rasulullah, not just by previous prophets and messengers, but by God Himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell Jibreel, He would tell Adam, He would tell other prophets. That's another subject for another day. He would tell them about what's going to happen in this ultimate show of sacrifice that Allah decided to make. Imam al-Hussein is God's sacrifice. He is Tharullah wa ibn Tharih. So these were foretold. At least the broader outline was already told and passed down from generation to generation. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says that Rasulullah told us about this. Then he said the following. The hadith is found in Bihar al-Anwar. He says that when Imam al-Hussein is killed, Satan will come with his demons and his cronies. فَيَطِيرُونَ فَرَحًا. They will fly and hover above the horrific scenes of the plains of Karbala as they rejoice and celebrate. Satan will tell his demons that we have finally avenged from the lineage of Adam what we wanted. We've finally taken from them the most precious thing we could take. And we have finally led every single child of Adam astray except those who hold tight to this small band of people, meaning the household of Rasulullah. Shaitan himself understands his limitations. He acknowledges his weaknesses. And so he says that everyone will be led astray. Now that we've managed to get Imam al-Hussein killed along with his children, infants, brothers. Now that we've managed to do this, we've managed to get humans to do this, then we've done the best thing we could do. And so everyone will be led astray except the ones who hold on to this small band. Then he gives instructions to his demons. Listen carefully. He says, فَاشْتَغِلُوا. Now you need to exert your best efforts in doing what? في تشكيك الناس فيهم وحملهم على عداوتهم. Your number one priority now should be to make people develop doubts in this family. And to make people turn into enemies of this family. He said, if you do that, you're all set. تشكيك الناس فيهم. Cast seeds of doubt. Right? Because you cannot undo a thought, as one famous atheist advised his friends. He said, listen, you don't have to work too hard. Simply ask questions. You know how sometimes this is how imposters and charlatans, this is how they influence their audience. They'll tell you things like, I'm only asking questions here. I'm not asserting anything. I'm not, making a point and ascribing it to myself. I'm simply asking a question. But that question turns into the seed of a doubt, and that infection then grows until it takes over the entire person's mind, and they're done. They're done. There's no turning back. So, you have those with nefarious intentions. If they are good people deep down, may Allah guide them. And if not, and if they cause others to deviate due to their nefarious intentions and actions, then may Allah bring about their destruction sooner rather than later. But then you have the general public. You have young brothers and sisters. You have people who don't know any better. They haven't been educated. They haven't sought answers to their questions. And so if they ask us, what's the point? Why are these gatherings so important? Haven't there been tragedies on a much grander scale before? Why do we gather around to commemorate Imam al-Hussein year after year after year? We've had 2 world wars. 70 million people got killed. We've had massacres. We have a massacre unfolding right before our 2 eyes right now as we speak. Right? All of these tragedies. Why this? Why Imam al-Hussein? Why Karbala? Why Ashura? If this question is ever presented to us, the answer to people who are well-meaning and well-intentioned and who wish to know the truth, our answer is this. My dear brothers and sisters, may Allah bless you. Thank you for asking. That's a beautiful and important question. Our response is, number one, Islam as a religion, pay close attention. Islam is a very complex system, and it's made up of multiple layers. In one hadith, Rasulullah says that Jibreel told me that the example of Islam is like a tree, where at its base, at its core, at its roots, you have faith, you have belief, you have the fundamental tenets of the religion. Then you have branches, and the branches represent salat, acts of worship. Then you have leaves, and the leaves represent refraining from acts of sin, fasting. And the fruit is being mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Then the Prophet says, or Jibreel says to the Holy Prophet, he says, so a tree is not complete and is deficient and flawed if it doesn't bear fruit. In other words, if you find yourself unable to refrain from acts of sin, it means there is something wrong with the composition of this tree. Either it's not being watered. The same hadith says that the water, the nourishment that reaches the tree is zakat. It is giving alms. It is giving charity. It is giving khums. If you don't do that, you won't be able to water the tree. The tree is going to go dry without this. So if you don't do that, then it's not going to bear fruits. If you don't uphold prayer, it means this tree is just a trunk. It doesn't have any branches. Once again, there's a problem. Maybe the problem is at the very roots of the tree. The point I'm making is this, that Islam is a multifaceted, multi-layered, complex web of teachings, instructions, rituals, and all manner of different things. It's a whole system of life. Part of this religion is what we call the fundamentals of daruriyat. What are the fundamentals? Without a doubt, the principal tenets of the faith, the beliefs that you're supposed to hold, are at the bedrock. Then you have actions that are considered fundamental. For instance, today I'm really tired. I got back from work. I've been up since early morning. And I just couldn't be bothered to get up. My back hurts, my knee hurts, my legs hurt. It's been a long day at work. It's been hard work. Can I miss salah? Our response to that is, no, my dear brothers and sisters. You can't miss salah. If you're unable to stand, truly unable to get up, you could pray salat sitting down. Like sometimes you come across elderly people, may Allah bless them. These are pioneers of the community. These are the ones who passed down the love and remembrance of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein to us. They're worthy of respect and honor. Sometimes you see them in the masjid, sitting in a chair and praying. Why? Because he'll say that my back hurts too much. The doctors have instructed me not to stand upright. So what do? We say, sit down, bring up the turba up to your forehead as opposed to you bowing down. But prayer must be upheld. It must be fulfilled. La تُتْرَكُ الصَّلَاةُ بِحَالٍ, the hadith says. There's almost no circumstance, no situation, no scenario where salah could be abandoned. It might have to be performed in a different way, but it has to be performed. If somebody's drowning, we have such a thing in our fiqh called Salatul Ghariq, the prayer performed by someone who's about to drown. God forbid, you ever find yourself in that situation, you're shipwrecked, and you only have a few hours, and you can't pray while you're in the sea, can you? The answer is yes, you can. You do it through ima, through facial gestures. If you're in hospital, you've just been through a difficult operation, you come out of your coma, for example, and we've had people asking this question from our scholars. What do I do? What about my mother, my father? Look at them, they can't get up. They use their eyelids. They recite what's supposed to be recited, and they use their eyelids and their hands. Or if they can lift their head just a little bit, they use those gestures and those subtle movements to represent ruku' and sujood. So salah is a fundamental part of our religion. No matter what happens, we're not allowed to abandon it, to relinquish it. Now, Sha'airul Hussein are fundamental parts of our religion. Fundamental. Someone might say, I am in hospital. I'm too sick. I have a chest infection, a pneumonia. Am I also supposed to commemorate the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein? We say, may Allah give you healing, may you recover, may you get well soon. But you probably understand better than most of us how it feels when somebody is sitting on your chest, as Abu Abdullah al-Hussein faced on the day of Ashura. The fact that your lungs are constrained, you could empathize with Imam al-Hussein better than me. So yeah, commemorate Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Someone's just come out of surgery. You know how with a lot of surgeries, when they put you under a general anesthetic, when you come out, they'll tell you you're not allowed to drink any water. Some of you might have seen patients in a hospital, elderly people. They tell them you're not allowed to drink any water. Not even a drop. No, not even a drop. You understand better than anyone else what it means that Imam al-Hussein was thirsty on the day of Ashura. Yeah, even you should commemorate. You can commemorate and do so much better than the rest of us. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. So these are parts of our fundamental layers of religion. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam says to Ar-Rayyan ibn Shabib, he says to him, Ya ibn Shabib, if you wish to be raised with us fi al-Rafiq al-A'la, on the day of judgment, for you not just to enter paradise, but to be raised with us at the same level of the family of Rasulullah, then ifrah li farahina wahzan li huznina. Then celebrate our joy and the times of happiness that the Ahlul Bayt have had, and commemorate our sadness and tragedies. In other words, align yourself when it comes to your heart, when it comes to your emotions, when it comes to your outpour of tears. Align those with us. You'll be raised with us. Allahu Akbar. What is this reward? What is this compensation that Allah gives to the ones who cling on to the Ahlul Bayt and align their emotions with them? It's incredible, brothers and sisters. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says to Fudayl, he says to him, Inni wallahi la uhibbu tilka al-majalis. By God, I love those gatherings of yours. I love them. Then he said to him, Ahyu amrana, revive our cause. Rahimallah man ahya amrana. May Allah bless those who are gathered here tonight. May Allah bless those who are helping as volunteers to put this program together, and every gathering where Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is honored, where his tragedy is recited, where his religion is upheld. May Allah bless anyone who contributes to those. Rahimallah. It's the words of Imam al-Sadiq, Man ahya amrana. By the way, Imam al-Sadiq also says, he says, Oh Allah, bless those eyes that tear up for us. The dua of the proof of Allah for anyone who cries even a drop of tear, the size of the wing of a fly, as per one hadith. Oh Allah, bless those eyes. I swear to God, brothers and sisters, when we cry in these majalis, we're purifying our eyes. We're purifying our ears. When we beat our chest, we're purifying our hearts. When we attend these gatherings, we purify our very existence. That should be the aim. That should be the intention. To say, Ya Aba Abdullah, purify me, cleanse me. Make me among the people that you call on the day of judgment and give the title of Husayni to. Alawi, Fatimi, Hasani. Purify me and cleanse me of my wrongful actions, my sins, my transgressions. I have too much baggage resting on my shoulders. I've committed too many sins over the last year. Since the last time I cried for you, Ya Aba Abdullah, I know I'm sinful. As John said to Aba Abdullah on the day of Ashura, he said, Ya Aba Abdullah, inna rihi lanatin, inna nasabi lala'im, inna lawni la aswad. My smell is unpleasant. He was an ironsmith. He used to fix the swords for Imam al-Hussein and his companions. So he's always dealing with metals and oils and whatnot. He said, I smell bad. My lineage is not a noble one. My skin is black. Although he's not talking about his complexion. In Arabic they say, Aswadul wajh, meaning that I'm a sinful man. I'm not a noble person. فَتَنَفَّسْ عَلَيَّ بِالْجَنَّةِ Ya Aba Abdullah, breathe onto me the fragrance of paradise. They say that when Banu Asad came and they were gathering the companions and the family of Imam al-Hussein for burial, they couldn't find John, the black slave. It is said that the means with which they found his body in the end was because of the beautiful fragrance that the body emitted. Because other than Ali al-Akbar, Imam al-Hussein placed his blessed cheek on no other cheek except John, the slave of Abi Dharr. That is the transformative power of Abu Abdullah. Brothers and sisters, when you come here, you are ennobled, you are honored, you are cleansed. The objective we should all seek is this. Many of the companions of Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, when they went into battle and they fell to the ground, they got injured and they were about to die. I'm sure you've heard this before. Hamid ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi and others would look up at Abu Abdullah and they would say, Aradit, Ya Abu Abdullah, are you pleased with me? Awafait, have I been loyal to you? Have I fulfilled my pledge with you? Our aim should be over the next 10 nights, that at the end we get to look in the direction of Karbala and we say, Aradit, have you been pleased with me? Did I make you proud? Did I fulfill your honor? And my pledge to you, Ya Aba Abdullah, did I make Rasulullah pleased with me? Did I do something so that you would even look at me and take a glance in my direction? Aradita ya Aba Abdullah, are you pleased with me as a person? Are you pleased with me as a husband or wife, as a father or mother? Are you pleased with me as a member of the community that bears your name? Are you pleased with me being called one of your Shia? Are you pleased with me saying, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza fawzan azima? Are you pleased, Ya Aba Abdullah? And hopefully the Imam would respond to us the way he did to Abdullah, Hamid ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi. What did he say to him? He said to him, Na'am, I'm pleased with you. Anta amami fil jannah. You will precede me to paradise. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam said to Ali ibn Mahziyar al-Ahwazi, one of his representatives, imagine if the Imam of our time sees us like this. Is it possible? The answer is yes. Yes, it's possible. I know I'm bad. I know I'm not worthy. I know I don't deserve it. I know I'm nowhere near being accepted into the embrace of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein or the ranks of his companions or anywhere close to that. But he can do it. Just like he did it with John and Aslam, the Turkish slave. Just like he did it with Hur. Hur committed the gravest crime. He intercepted the path of Imam al-Hussein. He blocked Imam al-Hussein from proceeding towards his destination. He instilled fear in the hearts of the women and children of Abu Abdullah. But Imam al-Hussein has the capacity to do it. Imam al-Hussein is like a waterfall. All we have to do is put our cup underneath the waterfall. That's it. All you have to do is that. Extend your hand, bow your head down, get off your high horse the way Hur did. All you have to do is that. Obviously, that cup needs to be purified. That hand needs to offer a pledge of allegiance to the Imam of the time. But once you do that, the cup will be filled instantaneously. You will get everything you ever wished for. And above all, you will get closer to Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein has the capacity to do that. It's possible. You have to believe it. And you have to understand it so that you could make the journey towards him, insha'Allah. Now, it's the first night. We don't want to take too long. And you're always conflicted that on the first night, which direction do you take? Where do you go? But perhaps, as I said earlier, we should go to the tragedies that were slightly opened by the Ahlul Bayt themselves. We have many sources that speak about the events of Ashura. The most important of those are the actual words of the Imams alayhimus salam. Imam al-Sadiq says in Kamil al-Ziyarat by Ibn Quluwayh al-Qummi Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh, this preeminent legendary scholar, the teacher of Shaykh al-Mufid, the teacher of Shaykh al-Saduq, one of the earliest sources of hadith, the scholar who was so close to the time of the minor occultation of the Imam. He says in this book, Kamil al-Ziyarat, quotes Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam as saying to Imam al-Hussein the following. He says, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكَ فَيُسْفَكَ دُونَكَ دَمِي وَأَقِيكَ بِنَفْسِي. Imam al-Sadiq, the sixth Imam, says, Ya Aba Abdullah, I wish I were there on the day of Ashura so that my blood would be shed before you, so that I would shield you with my body and my soul. Then the Imam gives us glimpses of the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein. He says, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ طَعَنَكَ. May Allah curse the ones who stabbed you. لعن الله من ضربك. May Allah curse the ones who struck you. لعن الله من رماك. May Allah curse the ones who shot at you. لعن الله من اجتز رأسك. يا حجة ابن الحسن, I don't know if I can translate these passages. May Allah curse the one who severed. لعن الله من ضرب ثناياك بقضيبه. May Allah curse the one who saw those teeth. لعن الله يا حجة ابن الحسن آجرك الله. لعن الله من أبكى نسائك. May Allah curse the ones who made your women cry and weep. Subhanallah, I didn't want to mention this, but now that we've reached the women and the children, why not? As-Sayyid ibn Tawus says, in his Maqtal al-Luhuf, he narrates a story. He says that a man went to Kufa. He was asking about those who participated in the killing of Abu Abdullah to see what had happened to them. He says he came across a man. They said he participated. He said, I went to him. He was blind in both eyes. So I said to him, what's your story? What did you do? How did you go blind? He said, I was one of 10 people. 10 of us got together and said, let's go kill Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. I was one of 10. When we reached Karbala, the 9 other people in the group, they all took part in the massacre of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But I never did. فلم أرم بسهم ولم أضرب بسيف ولم أطعن برمح. He said, I never shot an arrow. I never struck with the sword. I never threw a spear. All I did was stand there and watch these horrific crimes being perpetrated. He said, I didn't do anything at all. But then when I got back to Kufa, I went to bed that night. I saw a dream where someone who looked truly terrifying, he came to me and he said, Ajib Rasulullah. Answer Rasulullah, he's summoning you, he's calling for you. He said, I said, what does Rasulullah want from me? He grabbed my hand and he took me to an area in the desert where Rasulullah was seated. He was covered with dust from head to toe. And in front of him there was a bowl full of blood. He said Rasulullah was crying, dusty, disheveled, no turban over his head. He said to me, how could you do what you did? He said Rasulullah was flanked by 2 angels who were holding whips made of fire. He said, Ya Rasulullah, what do you mean I didn't do anything? Rasulullah then commanded my 9 friends to be brought. Each one of them was whipped with the flame and they burnt and burst instantaneously. Then Rasulullah said to me, well, what about you? I said, Ya Rasulullah, I swear to God, I never shot an arrow. I never threw a spear. I never struck anyone with my sword. So Rasulullah said this to me. He said, وَلَكِنَّكَ كَثَّرْتَ السَّوَادِ. But you increased the numbers. In other words, let me try and open this up for you. أَجَرَكَ اللَّهُ بَقِيَّةَ اللَّهِ. when Lady Sakina came out of the tent looking for her father's horse, imagine the fear, imagine the terror, seeing 30,000 men. You were one of those men. You struck fear in the hearts of Ruqayya, Zainab, Rubab. كثرت السواد. May Allah curse you. Then Rasulullah dipped his finger in that blood. He took a tiny smidget and he put it over my eyes. When I woke up, I was blind. Allahu Akbar. Ya Baqiyat Allah. You've all heard that Imam al-Hussein left an ill daughter in Medina. She's known as Fatimatul Alila. When Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is about to pack up, the caravan is ready, they're about to leave. Imam al-Hussein comes to her bedside. He wakes her up. We don't know the exact nature of that intimate conversation between father and daughter, but we can only imagine Imam al-Hussein saying, "Sweetheart, wake up, we're about to leave." Fatima al-Alila wakes up. "Father, where are you going to leave me? Take me with you." Imam al-Hussein would say, "This is a journey that will not end well. This is going to be a long trip. We're not coming back. Father, if you must leave and you can't take me, then perhaps you could leave my brother Aliyun al-Akbar." "Sweetheart, Aliyun al-Akbar can't stay. Aliyun al-Akbar is my special sacrifice. Aliyun al-Akbar is the one who will resemble Rasulullah on the plains of Karbala. He will remind them of his grandfather." "Father, then why don't you ask my uncle Abbas to stay with me?" "Sweetheart, your uncle Abbas is my flag bearer. Today we were there in the ceremony when they raised the flag. All I could think of was Abul Fadl al-Abbas. He's my flag bearer. He's my one-man army. He can't stay. He has to come. Father, what about my infant brother Aliyun al-Asghar? Surely if I can't go, then Aliyun al-Asghar can't go." "My sweetheart, honey, Aliyun al-Asghar is my last and final arrow on the day of Ashura. He's my tiniest soldier. He's a soldier who can't even go towards the battlefield. I have to carry him with me. Rahim Allah man nada wa Husayna wa ghariba wa mazluma." Azaya Hussein.